going on by the sound.
We're trying. We're trying. The thing is really to get it all organized. So, like with Singapore, I think we have been just talking about already more than 1.5 year,
Okay.
and it goes slow. It goes
Sure.
slow, but
Yeah. 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 Hi, Sasha. And we've got Nick just coming online as well. That's good. And just while Nick's sort of booting his system up, Pebby was hoping to join us, but he's actually at another WOA meeting, which is probably where Ronel is, Stefan, in Delhi. So I'm not sure whether Ronel will join us and or Pebby, but I think we can have some useful discussions anyway. And I think you also said that Kinley might join, Stefan. I'm not sure whether that's likely
Yeah,
or.
she is next to me, but the problem is like this meeting in New Delhi, so it's an important meeting for WOA Asia Pacific meeting. But the problem is like there is the session on rabies exactly now, so that's why it's important also for Ronel and Kinley to be there.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Okay. Hi, Nick.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was a bit late.
That's good. So maybe with everybody's permission. So I think everybody knows everybody. So Az just met Stefan, and I think the rest of us all know Stefan. Oh, Sasha, do you know Stefan?
No, I'm not sure on Stefan. What's your role, Stefan?
Yeah, so I'm Stefan Rodan, so I work for the WOA sub-regional representation for Southeast Asia in Bangkok. And I'm here like advisor to the team, to the technical team. I'm not a veterinarian. I come from the headquarters of WOA, where I used to work for 6 years before joining the office here in Bangkok. So,
okay, and in what capacity do you join the team there?
As an advisor, in like I'm providing my support on project management, finance, administration, strategic relation with partners and donors, kind of supporting the sub-regional representative here and all the technical colleagues for the project to move forward and to be aligned with our mission, mandate, and rules, more or less.
Okay, just a quick question. Do the French also still sponsor the technical head for the region?
In Bangkok? No.
No longer.
Well, I don't think France has ever paid for that. France has sometimes put secondly a staff here, and actually we have one paid by France, but the sub-regional representative is paid by our budget.
Yeah, I know, but it's sponsored by the French government. I mean, historically, like Stefan Foreman, the lady, there's 3 in a row that were all the French technical advisors. So I'm just wondering, it was always sponsored. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Myself, I'm a WOA staff. I'm not sponsored by France.
Okay, good. Yeah, so
I
was
used
just
to
wondering.
work for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs before.
Who's the current technical advisor to the group for the FMD, CCFMD?
So we have the TADS coordinator, so that follow up all the TADS team here, and it's called Karma Rinzin. He's from Bhutan.
Okay, thank you.
We are a small team, in Bangkok. We are 12 staff, including the sub-regional representative, and 2 main teams, the one on One Health and the one on TADS. And myself, I'm more in transversal role, supporting everyone again.
Very good. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
And Stefan, Sasha hasn't really introduced himself. Do you want to just say who your role in SIVA, Stefan? Sasha?
Sorry, I'm the head of the Veterinary Public Health Group, but I work very closely with the Bangkok group since the late 90s, and I haven't had too much to do with them in the last 5 years. But I know most of the players there historically, Stefan. I now work for SIVA, and we've got this product in final development and now commercial stage, which is an oral bait for dogs, vaccine for rabies. So this is part of the group that I work with. My colleague is Advos, that you can hear here, which is our oral bait expert, whether it be rabies or other vaccines that we have in our portfolio.
Thanks, Sasha. So maybe I can just a little bit of introduction from me, and then I'm going to sort of hand over perhaps to Nick, if I can, maybe to start with Nick. I'm sort of sitting in this meeting because of my role in an Australian-Indonesia health security partnership, which is a technical development program in Indonesia. And we've got quite a lot of input now into the rabies situation, which is sliding away a bit on us in Indonesia. So we've had, 2/3 of the country endemic. In the last 4 or 5 months, May, we had an outbreak into a previously free island of Timor. So we have an emergency response, which we're trying to support in Timor with a view of eliminating the disease from that, which is not going quite as quickly as we would like. And then we have the longer term iterative attritional programs in places like Bali that, we've discussed previously online. And as we all know, there have been a number of efforts made with that. And we've got a big issue with free roaming dogs. We've trialled oral rabies vaccine there successfully. Compliments to Siva and all the technical support from Ad and his team. The product was registered at the end of September, so it is now as such available in Indonesia. There is a bit of sort of hesitation about how it's going to be used, and I think the intention from the project point of view and from Australia sort of supporting options in the region is to pilot oral rabies vaccine as part of a sort of faceted, comprehensive, rigorous, opportunistic program for really hitting rabies and actually moving it away from endemic into hopefully a free or at least a very low incidence, low risk and ultimately free status. And I think that's in discussion with the government counterparts and things. They're comfortable with that conceptually. Obviously, there's a bit of work needs to go into scoping how much, and issues of budget will come quite quickly into play. So I think that's primarily what we're. Just sidetrack. Pepe was hoping to join us, but he probably isn't going to be able to. He's in a meeting in Delhi along with Renell and others. But he may do. But I think we can still have a useful discussion. We need to sort of think about what is the capacity of this group, if you like, to supply oral rabies vaccine. And then from that, we'll look at defining the protocols, the subpopulations, how we're going to actually use it. There'll be some bumps in the road in terms of who's going to pay for what, and we'll need to define that as we go through. So that's really what I'm looking for today, is to try and get some clarity in terms of, are we looking at 10,000 baits or 20,000, or what's the delivery time, who's going to pay what, when, how, sort of issues on that. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. Nick, can we go to you perhaps first, and then we'll come back to the WA and SIVA colleagues.
Yeah, sure, John. Thanks. Well, I guess just to start off the issues. Well, the situation is probably more or less not that dissimilar to how it was when we spoke last, Sasha and Ad, in terms of where DFAT is concerned, or the program that I'm running with WOA. So part of the reason I asked Stefan to join us, because he's part of the team managing the program that we're funding with WOA, and that essentially is where funding support will come from for the oral vaccine, and it's where the support has come from for the injectable that's already in West Timor. So that's sort of the bottom line in terms of that. A couple of other things to sort of bits of context. So we've got a contract with Michael Ward, or WOA is contracting Michael Ward. So I don't know if you know him, you guys. So he's a professor of epi at the Sydney Vet School. So we're getting Michael in because he's done some roaming dog estimates in Timor-Leste before, and we're not especially confident of the dog population estimates that we have currently. So whilst Michael's only got about a week in country, what we'll try and get him to do is focus on TTS, so that we can try and get a reasonable estimate in TTS, and hopefully have that across a bit of a cross section across the more sort of capital area, so the slightly more the denser area, and then a couple of sort of more rural villages, so that we can try and have a little bit of nuance to that estimate, and then that'll be probably about as good as we can get in a limited time frame before the end of the year from Michael to give us at least some sort of guiding estimate to compare against what we've had so far. So that's in train, and Michael's due to go in on the 26th, Stefan, I think, isn't he? 26th of November.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, for 1 week.
Yeah, for a week. So we'll have an idea of a better idea of numbers after that. And then we'd be looking to, negotiate with you guys around delivery, price, delivery, and all the logistics of that. Between now and then getting serious once we've got an estimate from Michael on the other side of, so by about the end of November. So that's about where we're at. And then there's a ongoing issue with operational funds in West Timor at the moment, and seems to be some ducks and drakes going on there. They say they've got funds, but people don't seem to quite be able to make them be mobilised somehow or other. So I don't know how much about that you want to go into, John, but that's something.
Thanks, Nick.
Just one question. Can I just ask one question? West Timor is like 4 provinces together, and TTS is only one of them, isn't it?
TCS it's a district. I was going, John. It's your patch. You go.
Nusa Tenggara is the province, which is a bunch of islands over at the eastern sort of end of that line of small islands east of Java. TTS is a particular district. There are 5 districts in Timor, Indonesian Timor, but there are other districts in the other islands of NTT, including Flores, which is endemically infected with rabies, Sumba, which is free. So there's a real mishmash there. Obviously, West Timor, Indonesian Timor, has an international border with Timor-Leste, which is quite complicated because you've both got an enclave and a main border between the two countries. So there's quite a lot of border to cover there, and quite a lot of porous movement across that border. I think if we think about rabies control, obviously, yes, we want to know the population. We want to have the ability to hit that high level of vaccination coverage, which is obviously a key element of vaccination control to the point of elimination. And reflecting sort of on what Nick's just said, one of the issues we face both in areas of Timor, but particularly in Bali and some areas of Indonesia, is this free roaming dog. So we're really keen to sort of up the ante in terms of how we can use oral rabies vaccine. And I think that's probably where I'd like us to sort of focus the discussion a bit on today. In terms of SIVA, you have a product. I think we heard last time, Sasha, you have a certain amount of product that has a date life of, I forget, May or something in the coming year, so over the next 6 months or so. So you've got product. Nick, through WOA, has some liquidity to buy product. We have some ability to use product. Government is keen to, I think, endorse this, but we'll have to go through a series of, definition of protocols, formalities, approvals, and things like that. We'll run into issues, as Nick just mentioned. Operational costs will be a concern. Who's going to pay that and how that'll work? So we've got a number of moving parts on this. But one of the first things is, are we talking of what can we supply? So, you may want to take this offline, but we need to know how much SIVA is prepared to charge, or what sort of level of discount you're prepared to give us, Sasha, what quantity of vaccine we can usefully have, and then we can put it into a rational use in terms of some targeted subpopulation as best we can, either in Timor or perhaps in Bali. But we need a bit of a quantum at the moment, and we're slightly struggling without that. We haven't got any bounds to what we can do.
Okay, no, so exactly. So for just to be just open, very open here. Look, we're in our first commercial venture here in terms of the product. We've got lots of expertise in doing little pilot programs that everybody is requesting, and we've been doling out trying to spread our resources. But a couple of years ago, we said, look, can't do everything for everyone. So look, from where I sit is, this is going to be obviously an important in terms of capturing the potential of the product to value add and make the qualitative result of mass vaccination good in terms of the aims of elimination of rabies. So in terms of aims, SIVA is there trying to say, look, let's have a look if we can actually make a difference. And so, while the commercial cost is important down the track, what our aims here is make sure that the product can be used appropriately, and it doesn't give me a lot of confidence. You saying you don't know how many dogs there are. We don't know if we can get ground resources going. So there's a lot of things, like you say, that are moving pieces here, but we'd like to be contributing to a pretty solid effort in West Timor. And I'm not sure if that involves the whole of West Timor, or if you say 5 provinces or just a certain district. Obviously that's all to be demarked. But look, we're here to kind of support the effort, not only with product, but with also expertise. In terms of volume of product, we can prioritize, sequential increases. And I told you that previously. We could prioritize product being made available, but we kind of need 6 months notice. So we've got what we've got at the moment on hand. And like I said to you last year, not last year, a few months ago, and last year, that we've got probably 30,000 doses sitting there, basically ready for a home, of which around about, I don't know what proportion, but a proportion of it, maybe half, is expiring kind of like in I guess about 6 months' time. And so so I'm not sure on, if we haven't progressed too much, what's the feasibility of actually getting something done in 1Q next year in terms of starting the initiating the program and starting to say, okay, we've got the education build, we'll start with these areas to train the people, there'll be dispensement, and then we'll scale up from there. We're quite comfortable in supplying as much as you need from, say, mid-year, June. But in the meantime, how much would you need, or would you envisage? And I guess it's a two-way street. We could allocate up to 30,000 doses there. That's not much, or that's too much?
No, I think 30,000 is a good whack for a pilot study. And in fact, we probably don't need as much as that. But I think, one of the problems is that, Timor is a priority because of the emergency response. We have, as Nick's just referenced, we have less information about dog population there, less understanding about the percentages that are free roaming. So that will become a bit clearer. So that becomes one possible opportunity. The other one is to revert to our old patch in Bali, where we have a lot more familiarity, we have a lot more capacity. But, it's an island that is, fairly densely populated, and it's a contiguous environment, or continuous environment from one end to the other. So there's not so much a discrete population that we can target. So within the logic, we would, and it again, resource dependent. So, it's a bit chicken and egg all the time. We would want to try and define some level of subpopulation that at least had minimal import-export of dogs, moving of dogs in and out. And I think we've had some initial discussions, and we'd probably be looking at a northern element of the island, a district called Buleleng, which name didn't worry you, but probably, and need to come back into the population demographics. Bali normally has 650,000 dogs. There are 9 districts. This is quite a big district, so it's probably arguably got 80,000-90,000 dogs, of which about half of them are free roaming. We wouldn't try and do the whole district. It's a big task. We'd try and do some sub-districts. If we could get some number of thousands, then I think we'd be starting to have a significant understanding of how to use it in a more circumscribed area. We need to understand both the politics and the geography of Buleleng a bit more. But I think that's where the thinking would be. If we have more and we have the ability to give more, then we can make it a bigger, more robust program. that takes a bit more lead time, not necessarily that much more. I think we operationally, if we can go through these discussions and define a protocol, over the next 1-3 months, and expect to start to get this moving after Ramadan. So basically in Q2 next year, I think that's when we'd be aiming, sort of April, May time, which is the historic time when they run rounds of vaccination in Bali anyway. And we'd be running it in parallel, or at least as a part of a parenteral stroke oral rabies vaccine sort of approach. So I think that's the thinking, but Sasha, it needs definition, and I totally sort of understand what you're saying on that. Ad, do you want to make some suggestions there? You've got quite a lot of familiarity with Bali and an understanding of what you think might work there. To some extent, how long's a piece of string? What can we do? But we need to be as circumscribed as we can and as specific as we can, but it'll have limitations.
Yeah, well, I actually last week I also discussed a little bit with Andy from Mission Rabies. And like what Nick already said, we hardly know anything about Timor. How many dogs there are, surveillance. We didn't even talk about surveillance. We don't really know what the disease is. But we know also, if we just sit on our chairs and don't do anything, it will just spread further and further. So I fully agree with you that, and what Sasha also said, is that let's move into Timor as quickly as possible and do an emergency response.
Yep.
I know I always discuss this also with WOA and WHO and all these people. Surveillance is of course important. Have real dog estimates is also important. It all helps. But I always say in Europe we didn't have a clue how many foxes we had. We didn't know where the disease was, but we went out there and delivered the baits, and we got rid of fox rabies. So yes, it's very helpful. But if in case of this, that we say, this is an emergency response. This is not, and that's how we also have to make sure that we tell the world. This is not a well-coordinated project like you want to do in Bulu Leng, where we really want to, where we have all the basic knowledge, where we have the surveillance data, we know everything, and there we will show the world. That's our pilot project for ORV, because last week I discussed quite a bit with Pebby, also what we also need, and WHO is right on top of that, and WOA will also be very interested, the cost benefits of ORV. You can look at that the short term. So what is the cost per vaccinated dog, including ORV, but you have to see the whole program and the efficiency in terms of the rabies elimination. That's what we're going to do in Bali, and we need some time to make a really detailed protocol that we cover all these aspects. But in Timor, the longer we wait, the bigger the problem will be, and the more money we need in the end. I've seen it in Turkey. We wanted to do oral vaccination. I said, I only need 5,000 baits. Now they do, we can solve the problem because it was so limited. And now they end up distributing millions and millions of baits every year. So the longer we wait in Timor, it's nice to have the data, but it's not absolutely necessary to get going.
Thanks, Ad. I think that's really sensible. And, Nick and I sort of in, different forums have been trying to make the Timor program shift, and we've been struggling a bit with that, part of which is free roaming dogs, but there are other issues at play there as well. Yeah. Nick, how does this fit with your thinking and the concept and how to work with WOA in terms of resourcing this?
No, look, the way Ad's spelled it out is exactly what I was thinking. I'd certainly want to focus on Timor first, and I agree entirely that we need to, and particularly with what data we do have, shows that it is pretty much confined to TTS, but there has been spillover just on the margins of it, and those areas it's just spilling into now have had very little coverage with the injectable. So we really need to get in there. But anyway, so you're right. We've got issues around the dogs. We'll get Michael in there because we're trying to sort of do that. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we need to try and get on with getting certainly this first batch of 15,000 in, and with a view to getting the second batch of 15 that you've got available. That's what I'd be wanting to do. I think we've got to sort out cold chain. We've got to sort out the protocols to get it in there. You've got an oral rabies vaccine in before, so hopefully, like my understanding is there's issues in Thailand where you got the vaccine in, and then the food people or something suddenly weighed in. But so I think we've got to work, we just got to make sure we get on with that. And then we need to agree on what the price is going to be and the timeframes, and then we can organise that so we can negotiate that directly with you through WOA. So I'd like to talk about that, whether you want to do that now or whether you want to do that separately and offline. I'm happy to do either way. I am really interested in part of those conversations being the stuff you talked about, Ad, in terms of the cost-benefit analysis in Bali. Obviously, that's a longer-term thing, and I think that's critical that we can show that. Because part of the conversations that I wanted to have with you guys was where you see the long-term strategy for SIVA in terms of, like, ideally, if we can get a really good cost-benefit analysis down the track for Bali, then it's, we're trying to be able to use that to advocate with, the governments of developing countries around long-term support from them, plus, donors as well. So I'm interested to know what your sort of thinking is long-term around that, and how you want to use what cost-benefit analysis you can get, and so what that sort of long-term strategy is as well. So I think that would be an interesting part of the conversation to have. But obviously the critical and immediate focus is getting maybe 15 in immediately, or 15 to 30 in immediately, and seeing that we can get the cold chain there to cover it. And then we've got
before Sasha will take over about the price, the thing with Thailand was basically that they changed the regulations again, the FDA. That's why there was a delay. They suddenly needed different documents. But I think with the support of the Ministry of Animal Health, Ibu Nunu in Jakarta, who is really has been very supportive so far, I think the import permit will not be the biggest issue. I mean, we've done it before already for several smaller amounts. Important to know is that the shipment costs, which we have hardly any influence on, are at the moment extremely high. They said after COVID they will drop, but they don't seem to drop. We're working on that part as well. So if it is possible, I would strongly suggest to have just one shipment and store it somewhere intermediate in Indonesia before you ship it to Timor. I don't know the cold chain possibilities there, but especially the long haul shipment to Indonesia is probably the most expensive part of everything. So if you can ship it all in one go, that would be the best. The cost benefit analysis, I already discussed that with a little bit with Pebby as well. You see, we have to adapt that to the local situation. I don't think, I can explain that a little bit in more detail on another occasion, because it's a kind of long topic, but we have several ideas. Basically, it is at the moment, I don't like the cost benefit analysis that they're performing right now, because they always look at one component, but you basically have 4 groups involved. You have the government who pays for it, or the NGO, it doesn't matter. Then you have, of course, the dog owner. Then you have the vaccinators, and you have the community. They all have different interests. So in this case, in Bali, you have the vaccination teams that get paid per dog. So we have to make sure that at the end of the day, the government is cheaper, has to spend less money. And on the other hand, to make sure that the vaccinators will do the job, and not say we don't like oral vaccination, they should get more money out of it than they had before per dog vaccinated. And that's quite easy in this respect, because now you have teams of 5 people. You can reduce them with oral vaccination with 2, because you don't need the catchers. So basically, you can reduce the cost per dog vaccinated that the government pays to them. You can reduce that, but not that much, so that the vaccinators instead have to split the dollar with 5 people. They have to split the money now with 2. So at the end, instead of getting 20 cents per dog, they get 30 cents or something like that. And then you differentiate between a parental vaccinated dog and an oral vaccinated dog, because the baits are much more expensive. So you want them to vaccinate as much dogs parental at the moment, and then just use the baits in case it's truly inaccessible. So that's some of the concepts I discussed already with Pebby, and also some other people in Indonesia, like with Evio, with Vaksin and all that. And that's the little bit the way we want to do this cost benefit analysis.
So thank you also. if I may forward, so we have been working with SIVA already in the past, and it works well in Thailand despite the issues and everything since we have done. There are several points. The first one is, I don't want to add some challenges, but yes, we believe it's important. We believe that's great that Indonesia can benefit from that. It will be important, of course, from WA that the request comes from Indonesia. We always work with our country and delegates to submit the request officially that we move forward. It's still outside our procurement process globally. So normally we never contract directly, we never purchase directly like this without quotes, as you know, as every organization. So we did it in the past, but it means that we are under derogation, and this derogation comes directly from the WA Director General, Dr. Monique Leroy. So we did convince her in the past in Thailand, that's the case. I think it was done with Cambodia. But we have to be careful. We have still to know that it's under exceptional basis. So here the exceptional basis is that the country and Australia, our donor on this, is willing to do that, and we have specific requests from them, then that give us the rationale to do that. But still, we need to be consistent in the past. We need to make sure that we have the elements. We need to make sure that the cost is limited, that there are no too much fluctuation between the different orders we do. We have seen that the transportation cost is expensive. We have seen that in Thailand, it was more than 30% of the total price of the vaccines themselves. That's considerable. I do agree in that sense that one only single delivery is always better. I used to manage the vaccine bank for parental vaccines at WA before. And so every time I recommend that please just deliver one batch. Of course, the shelf life need to be sufficient for the country. Understand here, there is a shelf life of 6 months for the first one. That looks extremely ambitious, but maybe to this later. So globally, yes, we will be able to help. We will help as much as we can with Nick giving approval and others, and so we can convince our Director General to again do a derogation on that. That's still some steps to do. And secondly, it will be important that it remains in the cost of the project, of course, with Nick, but also in the sense of we need to ensure that we are not in conflict of interest with one specific manufacturer, that we are doing that for the public good, and that we are doing that for the sake of the country itself. Thanks.
Okay, I think from the point of view of actually, getting this the point of operations, we need to put a bit more definition. We need to go back to PEBI obviously on this. 15,000, 30,000. It worries me slightly if we're talking about those higher numbers in Timor. Through already support from Nick's funding and we put 200,000 doses of parental vaccine into the province of NTT. They've so far, and the supposed target population in TTS in this one district is 60 to 70,000. We don't know, as Nick mentioned earlier. In how long is it now? Next 3 months, 2.5 months, they've done about 30,000. So we have a capacity issue there, and it would worry me slightly if we put a very large quantity of oral rabies vaccine in there with a short date life, that we're going to have to sort of manage that risk a little bit. But in terms of supply lines, international airport is Bali. They have cold chain available there, so we could deliver it there and then take a subset across to Timor. So that's probably manageable. But I think, we're going to need to sort of try and get, and, as Nick said, we're doing this population study, so that will give us a bit more of a feel for what the target population will be, and therefore how much oral rabies vaccine we need. So I think probably we're going to have to work through that. So over the next week or so with PEBI, we'll develop a bit of a sort of options in terms of target population, and then work with you, particularly Ad, in terms of perhaps some protocols about how that might sit together. And then I think the cost benefit comes a bit later, but I think it's really valuable and important. But let's get the sort of immediate sort of, as Ad was saying, it's emergency, and as we all know, let's get the vaccine into the dogs as higher rate as we can, using a combination of parental and oral. So if we work down that line, then there'll be obviously the negotiations and commitment in terms of funding and resort and supply. But hopefully we can start to think about using some of this oral rabies vaccine at least, early new year anyway. And I won't put too fine a date on it. We'll obviously have to talk to the Director of Animal Health about importing issues and things like that. So there'll be a few fences to climb over. does that seem a reasonable point? Scope the target population a bit, scope a couple of options within that, and come back to the group with that, Sasha.
I think I fully agree with you. The one aspect that I would defer to add is what resources for distribution are you going to make available? Is it going to be the local and team or people, or is it going to be a mobile team? Because for me, the training for dispensement is a critical element in everything. So, you know, we need to actually plan, a training with the right people that are going to be on board for, you know, the campaign of 2 or 3 months or whatever it is, to make sure that the product doesn't land there and just sit there going, well, we're not, you know. So I think that it's not that difficult, but I think that in the whole process needs to be a key factor.
I think that's a really good point, and that sort of pivots into the other issue of operating costs, which we might come to in a minute. The under the parental vaccination program, there are teams of people now trained who are doing a pretty good job of that, both in terms of vaccinating and recording. So they've at least got a baseline understanding about vaccinations and handling vaccines and managing recording vaccinations. So I think we'd probably build on that. So that would be a locally resourced team. But you're right, Sasha, they need to be trained. And, you know, obviously you led the training in Bali. So that absolutely critical. Yeah, totally, absolutely respect that. But I think it's something that is manageable. I think more of a concern is something that, you know, we've fought with, not just on rabies, but Indonesia, not uniquely, is a bit inclined to think that buying vaccines solves the problem of a vaccination campaign. All the management, operational sort of add-on costs rather get neglected, and there's an ongoing issue about lack of, they tend to be okay with consumables, but they're not good in terms of operating budget, fuel for people, daily allowances for people, and there's a real struggle on that. I don't know, Mission Rabies may have a little bit of liquidity. It's something that, both as an Australian project and in discussion with Nick, it's not something we really want to own operational costs. It's just a nightmare to manage. And it probably sends a bad message in terms of taking ownership away from the local authorities, which is really where it should be. But it's a big issue. And if we don't get that operational budget, of course, everything goes into sort of stasis or at least inefficiency, and we really don't deliver what we want to do. So it's a very important issue.
Yeah, as always, all these extensions, I mean, it's easy for WAHA or, a vaccine bank to be dumped in a country, but to actually get it used in the market in the right way is always the challenge, we would suggest, and I know that AD's already started talking to people that are really good on the ground people. Mission Rabies are pretty good on the ground people, but there's obviously other teams that are very active in Bali, Bawa, and there's a whole bunch of them that contribute to the vaccination efforts. Just wondering, is it worth doing? You want to give it to the local people in Timor. Is it worth doing something at the same time with a coordinated dual squad and stuff like that? I know that it's out of what you want to have responsibility for, but if it's an emergency response, you'd really like to see it delivered in a good way in the field.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree with that philosophy. It's something we've been fighting sort of uphill and down dale with over the last couple of months, Sasha, trying to get this rate of vaccination up. Ostensibly, at least in some areas of TTS, there aren't that many free roaming dogs. So on that basis, and, we've got to be careful about that assumption, there is no logistical reason why we shouldn't have a high rate of vaccination already, but we are struggling to get there. I don't know, do you want to make a comment there, Nick, about operational budget? We've tried sort of to work around that. We can sort of play the game a little bit by running a training course for a week rather than for 2 days, or for 2 weeks rather than 1 week. It's not enough, but it pushes the line a little bit. But it's a big nightmare, Sasha, as you've identified.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm sort of going to just paraphrase everything you just said. So Yeah, I sort of haven't got too much to add other than, you know, there are buckets of funding at the provincial level that they've identified, and there's internal issues that we can't really control. We're trying to have meetings with acting governors and this sort of stuff to try and get over those. I think we'll have a bigger carrot probably when we've got an official letter, an official request from the government of Indonesia to supply the vaccine, that we've got an agreement from Australia to supply it. That might start to push a bit more pressure down from the central government onto the provincial government, and maybe that'll be what it is. Like, it, you know, it's not ideal, and it's a risk that's there. The other side of it is, okay, well, you know, we come up with it and suddenly everyone's happy to go and do their bit of work, but we've just completely opened the door. You know, then there's Bali, then there's Flores, and there's the rest of the place. So it's just not it's just not a winnable game. It's not a sustainable game for us either. So it's the same strategic sort of approach that we're taking in, also in the sort of, as I alluded to, the discussions with you, Sasha, about, you know, what's the long-term sort of strategy from SIVA. So that's, you know, if we open that door, then we're going to be forever trying to shut it again. So we'd rather probably take the risk of dangling carrots and stuff like that, and trying to have conversations with and trying to get the central government to put a bit of pressure on the provincial government to use the money that they've got. So they have got some. They just haven't quite developed the sense of urgency to do whatever it is that they need to overcome the various interests that are stopping it being used. And it seems there are interests. So as there always are. So we've got to try and find a way to overcome that inertia.
Maybe just a little bit more colour to that. So this emergency funding sort of availability, as Nick says, it's there, but they're basically frightened of using it. There's been a history of corruption cases and people have ended up in jail. So basically they're frightened of using it. So yeah, which is crazy. And you try and make the logical argument that act early and you'll save yourself all manner of problems in the long term. But we still face this issue of personal fear, which seems to be quite pervasive, and it's very frustrating. But there you are. That's what it is. So I think, you know, operating budgets, you know, we'll try and address that. So I think from the point of view of where we're at in terms of discussions, I'll talk to Pebby. We're going to talk to Mission Rabies as well in a day or so's time, see where they're at and what level of support they can give up technically or perhaps operationally. I suspect that's not very likely. They don't have a big bucket of money, but maybe there's something there, given the fact we are still in a relatively early stage of the emergency response. So, you know, there's still an opportunity, which will, as Ad says, you know, we'll quickly lose this. It'll be endemic across the whole place. So options paper, some resources against that, and some budgets against that in terms of operating sort of costs and cold chain and things like that. Obviously, one of the key factors, and we needn't discuss in the open forum now, is how much Sasha's going to require for his vaccine, how much Nick and Stefan are going to be prepared to pay for the vaccine. I don't need to get involved in that discussion, but you know, ultimately, we need to know whether we're going to have access to 1,000, 5,000 or 15,000 and then manage that accordingly. So, you know, as long as it's sort of 5,000 or so, then I think we've got an operational resource that we can work with. If it's less than that, then I think we start to ask some questions. We probably don't need to go for the 15, 20, although we might want to if we're trying to look at a broader option, particularly if we're trying to pivot into some of the other areas.
Yeah, okay. So for me, I think that it's worth saying, look, you know, there's two things here. One that's going to be very important to me is the physical flow, because as you understand, the physical flow of the product, if we're going to stage it in Jakarta or we're going to stage it in Bali, the product has to be kept pretty well. And if everything's efficient after that, and I defer to Ad's experience, look, you know, we may not have to keep it at super cold temperatures for the week that it's distributed. For long-term stability, you keep it at quite a cold temperature. But in terms of efficacy, once you start to move it around, maybe just on ice is fine. So those sorts of logistical things can play into it. But I'd like to know what the administration in Jakarta or in Indonesia is going to make us do, because when I speak to our local regulatory head, she said, it has to come to Jakarta first before we can redistribute it anywhere else. And if we've got other options, like to put it into Bali and stage it there, I feel much more comfortable. And it will, that physical flow of the product will be important. Obviously, the customs release and stuff, making sure the administrative stuff there. And obviously, we'll try to support, obviously, as well as we can, technical extension. We might, put ad back down there for a week, and maybe sponsor something like that, for training and stuff like that. Look, I don't know what sorts of volumes, but as you were saying earlier, well, someone was saying earlier, I think it was Nick, basically saying, look, if this is not a winnable game over the continued manufacturing of this product, if we can't realize a €5 price going down the track. Now, I need to communicate that price to you guys just to say, look, it's no good dreaming, because I know that our shop will shut if we can't achieve that eventually. But I'm very willing, as I said to you last time, in this case, to very much support, with, I don't know, free goods being put on top just to reduce the price, 30-40%, to make sure that, we get the product into a trial that is actually emergency response or well, coordinated. So again, I would need to have a look at what the physical flow is. I think, Stefan, you have seen how expensive it is to actually fly goods. Okay, we just got to look at who takes what portion, also, and once it's in Indonesia, who is storing it, what the final transfer of ownership is, when that happens, etc. So I think that there needs to be a small flow chart made, and we can take that offline and have a look at putting a proposal forward to say, here's what can be, here's the whole chain, here is the relevant price for the responsibility. And for me, I think that's probably the best way to actually get a definitive price to support this particular thing. Because if I tell you, like, I'm willing to throw some free product, and then we end up spending twice as much to get it to the bloody island, my toes and my toenails are gone, because I've just thrown the product and also all the money on the whole program to get the product there. So we've got to just be smart here. We've got a good product. We've just got to find a feasible way to get it into Indonesia in the right way. Now, the great thing is we do have a registration. So after that, as Ad said, we have a very supportive director in the animal health, and that should be a good support. But I would recommend that we have Pebi on board to basically say, look, this is the best way to engage these people in terms of selling and execution, as in executing the plan, both in delivery and also in the market in terms of getting it into the dogs. So I think that there needs to be, and I don't know how much you're doing a lot of this already, but that extension, both at a high level and at that intermediate level, I think needs to be done so that we can get as an efficient and risk mitigated delivery down to dispensement to the animals in place. And that's going to take a few forums, I think. Ad, have you got anything to add to that?
Well, no, only one little thing, and I think this is why, if you say the material that we have now available that we can ship is officially not GMP material, because it was for so the documents have to go, cannot be the normal one, like for a commercial batch. So we have to do it the same way as Ibn did in the past. Let's say it's a special import permit, and this will actually help us a little bit because we can circumvent certain standard procedures for normal commercial batches, like the labels, the leaflets in local languages. Also, if we can just make sure that we say this has to come in the country through a special permit, like we did in the past. Ibn didn't want to do it for larger numbers. He says, I only want to do it when it's registered. I'm not going to let any material get into the country before it's licensed. Now it is licensed, so I would really urge us to try to get it through there as a special permit, and that it means it could also be shipped directly to Bali, like Sasha said. So it will at least get us rid of some of these headache dossiers that we would have if we do the normal official path. And like I said, it's an emergency response. That's how we sell Timor. Later with Bali, we can do it different. That's a different story. Or we can sell it as the cost-benefit analysis, as part also, as a still, and then later on, but once we have the true commercial product, which is GMP manufactured with all the GMP certificates, okay, that's a different story, but that's 6 months from now. That's only what I have to add, just from the whole flow and how we should approach this also within the government of Indonesia.
You're muted, Sasha, I think.
So, Ed, just from your opinion, how best to obviously this idea is floating and starting to get some color in the palette. How to make sure that the picture is engaged at the right areas at the right times and we get the right support, in your opinion?
One of the problems, is actually the flow of the goods, because okay, in Bali is very nice, but can we store that amount of baits? We don't know the capacity. That's also something that we have to consider. And then the whole thing is, we already discussed this, we have a limited shelf life for these goods, but and we want to get it out there, well, in the first quarter of next year. And we heard already from Nick and John that they have a problem reaching the docks. So I think we have to discuss this also when we talk with Mission Rabies, how we can organize that better. I don't know, the great thing is you use oral vaccination. You can also, if they have a technical school there, if they have a university, you can have, like they do in Mexico with a lot of volunteers. You don't need to have a certificate to vaccinate the dog with a needle. You just have to give it a bait. So sometimes you can have these, and I know this also from Bali in the past with, Bali Animal Welfare Association. They were also heavily involved in the vaccination campaigns. Maybe you have certain organizations on Timor as well that you can mobilize, and that you have more like a community campaign. But that's something we have to discuss also with Mission Rabies. They have loads of experience with organizing these mass dog vaccination campaigns. So they know a lot more what's possible and not than I do. But that's something we can discuss this week with Andy.
So who's to lead that sort of, those discussions and those forums? You said you're going to have some more discussions with a couple of people in the coming days, Ad?
Well, John actually, and maybe I'll join, has meetings scheduled with Andy and Fred right, from Mission Rabies. And basically, because I discussed that also with Pebby, one of the biggest, and we discussed it last time as well, that one of the problems is not only reaching the dogs, and Pebby acknowledged that last week when I discussed this, it's also the recording. We really don't know where the team's going, and the teams don't know if they really cover the whole area. So that's where Mission Rabies becomes very important with their app and with the planning of the campaigns, where the teams will go, because that is for me, one of the big issues in Bali is that, there's no idea where the teams really have covered the whole area, yes or no. So you have loads of white spots And from that pockets, rabies will re-emerge constantly. So that's one of these things that we really also is necessary in Timor, and that's where Mission Rabies could come in. And I know they're very eager to join us. At least Andy already told me. So I hope with their input we can also solve some of these logistic issues we've discussed this morning.
That's good. Thanks, Ed, and thanks, Sasha. Some really sort of important philosophical issues there, which we're not going to solve now. The willingness to pay by government or others is a big challenge, and they do like to think that their locally produced parenteral vaccine is a competent vaccine, which comes out at about 50 cents, and that's their sort of base level assessment of how much a vaccination program costs. So we've got to change that whole thinking around in terms of that operational costing issues of the vaccination campaign. So working with Mission Rabies is going to be useful, I think, in terms of their integrity and their logic and their experience. So that'll be really helpful. And obviously we need to work with PEBI and, through PEBI with the Bununong and the Director of Animal Health in terms of, what they, special import permits, point taken out. So we'll have to work on that. So I think probably the next stage is to talk to Mission Rabies, which I think we're scheduled to do on Thursday morning, UK time. And then Director of Animal Health, PEBI, I'm not sure whether I'll catch up with him this week, but next week. And then I think probably following that, if it makes sense, we'll do, and it'll be a pretty raw document, and initially a couple of sort of options papers in terms of target populations and the sort of resourcing that we're going to need, taking your point, Sasha, in terms of, point-to-point delivery wherever possible. So we'll try and include some options on that. In the recent supply of parenteral vaccines to Kupang, they were staged through Jakarta, which took a bit longer to get them out of Jakarta than we would have liked, but it happened and the cold chain was preserved, so it's okay. But the vaccines that went into Bali recently through another line of supply, they went directly into Bali. So we can work around that a little bit. I think, cold chain, at least to a sort of main distribution point, in this case, Kupang, is not too bad. So the district head is okay. It becomes more problematic if you're starting to get it out into the sticks where the roads are rough and quite long transit times and things like that. So we do need to be mindful of that. So I think I've got a few tasks out of that. What more do we need to talk about now, or should we start to wrap this up?
Just a quick,
maybe 2 points.
Yes,
go ahead, Sasha. Yeah, okay, I start. So 2 points, mostly on the cost. So the first thing is in the transportation. Yeah, I think one discussion you need to have, John, with Dr. Pebi. If the option is to bring everything to Bali, and after the charge of responsibility is given to Indonesia at this point of time, if it's not anymore the responsibility of the supplier, you need to really see with Dr. Pebi how much he can manage after a delivery from Bali to West Timor, and that's a key issue. If it's not in capacity to do that, it should be done by SIVA. In that case, it should be reflected in the cost of transportation by SIVA. But that's a key point, I think. The second one is the cost of the vaccine themselves. So I'm quite worried when you say that you could go for a decrease of 30-40%, because for me, in order to convince my people here, and my procurement people and my director general, I think I need to show more or less the same price as we had for Thailand. If not, I would need to rationalize why the price is different from what we have in Thailand. So I think the price we got on Thailand, and it would be a great support that we can have the same price for the vaccine themselves, to ensure that we can roll out easily here in Atua for all the internal decisions.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Stefan. Good points there. We'll work on those. Sasha.
Sorry, I have to actually go to another meeting at the moment, but from me, I think we'll work on all those points. Just Stefan, just to let you know, is that we've been supplying at €2 since 2016, just as a sort of a cost recovery. Now, I'm not sure if you want another company to go by the wayside in this. We'll work on it. But Stefan, I understand where you're coming from. We'll do our best, and we'll take that offline at the moment in terms of our overall aims. But I'm hearing you, and we'll have a look at the physical and the logistical flow, because it's very easy. Oh well, if you can't do it, well, that'll be on CEVA to do. But again, let's make it as simple as possible, and we'll try where we can to do that. But it's good to be introduced to you, and we'll work on the different points over the coming week, and try and hopefully, Stefan, if you're available next week, we might have a re-meeting just to try and help to define what is possible or what's the next steps to defining the administrative and physical flow of product.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sasha. Appreciate that support.
I actually need to go. It's just that I've got some other people on the other line. Thanks very much, Ed. I'll let you continue. Nick, nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha. We'll catch up shortly.
Thanks, John.
Nick, did you want to come in there? I think you were sort of raising your hand, and I think Sasha jumped in.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think Stefan sort of covered it really. So I think that was really that was the point that I was going to be sort of making. So I think just for sort of the next conversation, I think what I think is really a really critical part to this is the cost benefit analysis that needs to go. And I appreciate we sort of don't have a robust one now. So, but we really need to spend some time on the rationale around that, because in the long term, like, I completely get what Sasha's saying, is that, you know, CEVA wants to be able to sort of manufacture this long term and for it to be sustainable, and we all want that. We also need to be able to sell it to, because not just donors, because it's not just going to be donor, like long term for CEVA. If we want to be using this to eradicate rabies in places like Indonesia, there's going to be heaps of doses over a really long period of time, and developing country governments are going to have to buy it. So turning up with a €5 bait when they're spending, 20 to 50 cents a dose for injectable, that's going to be a tough sell without a serious cost benefit analysis that's easy for them to get their heads around. So that's sort of so I'm really keen to talk and to be supportive. No one's trying to give you a hard time. It's just how we've got to make this work, in the long term. And so that's where we're trying to come from.
And these are two of the issues that CEVA has to work on. We have to find a solution for the shipment. Get it more thermostable, get rid of the frozen shipment conditions or whatever. So these are technical issues we have to work on. And of course, the price is most likely, I'm not a salesperson, I'm just the scientist. So I think it will go down in the future as long as we have a steady demand of the product. Now it's a little bit, it's all, maybe there, maybe this, oh no, we cancel it. So there are very small volumes, but if we can, of course, increase go from a 200 bioreactor to a 500-liter bioreactor, that already makes a huge difference in your COGS and your cost of goods. So I think in the future, the price will come down of shipment and of the bait. That's just logic. It's just at the moment that we had this former price that Stefan was referring to. That was basically experimental material that we made, and I just fixed that price. Like I said, well, it's not a commercial product, so this is for research purposes, but that's not, it doesn't even cover the cost of producing it. So Sasha is now, he has to sell the product for in competition with the normal CEVA products, and if we produce it and it costs us more, then of course the production slots will go to other products. It's that simple. So I think for the future, that's the part CEVA has to work on, bring the cost down of the product and the shipment. The other thing is what you say, and that's everywhere where I work in the world, this is the big issues. And I've talked with a lot of other experts, we have to get this vaccination teams away from the government, because that doesn't work. I've seen it in Africa all over the place, all these projects. So you may know Sarah Cleveland and the project in Tanzania and the Serengeti, very well known in the rabies community. And I ask these people, if you guys leave, what will happen? After 20 years doing work there, everything will fall apart. After the project in Namibia, if the Germans step out, it's over. It's all over the place like that. So we need to get another approach, like you can do like the Mexicans do, and they were very successful. You get a lot of volunteers. You go 2 weeks time, you vaccinate 90 million dogs and cats on a yearly base, and they got rid of it in this whole country. So that could work, or you have to do it like with you have to pay individuals, not technical people from the government, but that do it on the side as a side job, and vaccinate dogs, or the community health care. They're doing some work also in Tanzania with this kind of approach, that you try to get away from these what we see also in Bali or in Timor, in Indonesia, that is really difficult to get these people motivated to vaccinate a lot of dogs in an efficient way. Mission Rabies is one option. That's a tender. Human Society International does it also in Indonesia and other countries. The government tenders these campaigns out and say, okay, an NGO will do it for us. But again, it's what John also said. Now the people look at vaccination. What is a vaccine dose cost? They don't look what it costs actually to vaccinate the dog. And that is where we have to go to and convince these governments. The price is not for the vaccine dose. The price is per dog vaccinated. And that's a lot of work we still have to do in these countries. And I think we can do that in Bali with a decent cost-benefit analysis. Again, Mission Rabies has good contacts with the University of Edinburgh that do all these kind of analysis. So I think also together with them, we can make a good project in Bali to find out what the true costs are and what the true benefits are. Now we have some publications. There recently was a publication from India they said, well, if oral vaccine is 10 times the price of a parental dose, it's still cost beneficial. But that's not the right approach, because like we discussed in the previous time with John, I'm not here to reduce the rabies incidence. We want to eliminate rabies. That's the only goal we have. Reducing the incidence is ridiculous. You don't have to go through all the efforts with oral vaccination, because then it will never be cost beneficial, of course, because you still have to keep up, your PEP, your surveillance. You want to get rid of the disease. And Indonesia has the advantage, although they have many disadvantages, they're islands. So you can go island by island. You can do island hopping in that respect. So I think there's still a lot of work to do. But I really, with this is in Timor, is an emergency response. We just want to go in there ugly, like every dog we see, we try to vaccinate, parental or oral. That's the only thing. And all the other things come later. I remember Kevin LaRue from KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa in the beginning. He did that's all estimations, sterilizations, vaccination certificates, and at the end he said, bugger off. The only thing I'm going to do is vaccinate dogs, and that's it. And he got rid of it. It's all back now, but he got rid of it. And that's the approach I want to do in Timor. Get in there, do it ugly quickly, and just vaccinate all the dogs. And all the hard data to convince people, we'll get that from Bali.
Thanks, Ed. I'm going to have to run too, so apologies to everybody. But I think that economics is much more than just cost of dog vaccination, as you say. It's the benefit, and Nick and I have discussed. The cost of post-exposure prophylaxis is way high, so we need to take that for program type logic. And
absolutely.
And Indonesia runs on 12 months budget cycles, so we never get that momentum established, and it's crazy. Thanks, everybody. Sorry, I really have to rush. And we'll catch up soon, and I'll circulate some stuff in the next few days. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for arranging, John.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Stefan. Bye.